On this episode, I am going to be talking about cancel culture. About 2 years ago, I got canceled off of Twitter, and it wasn't the worst thing. It forced me to learn so much about people and our society. Let's go. This is Stephanie, and this is Truth Detective. Did you know that I am your very own Truth Detective, giving you topics on society, culture, corruption, our justice system, U.S. news, and world news, the topics that matter to you most? I want to say thank you right now to my first-time listeners of Truth Detective, and I want to welcome you, and I hope that you listen to every episode by going to truthdetectivepodcast.com. Today, I am talking about free speech and being canceled, otherwise known as cancel culture. Well, no one likes that. You know, 2 years ago when one of my accounts got canceled off of Twitter, I was so upset. And then I realized something, that I am much better off. And you know what? It allowed me to think more clearly and openly, and I still don't know what I did to get canceled. But guess what? I have someone to thank. We have an extensive definition of cancel culture from Merriam-Webster Dictionary. This was first defined in 2016, but has added more to the definition recently as it has become so relevant in our society. I doubt that you can talk to anyone who doesn't know what cancel culture is. Maybe it was you, a friend, or a family member that has been a victim of cancel culture. It is very mean and unnecessary behavior. It is the practice or tendency of engaging in mass canceling as a way of expressing disapproval and exerting social pressure. Oh boy, isn't that the truth? Cancel culture is supported as a tool to stop offensive and harmful behavior. These people who find it offensive, you know, the people that cancel other people. This is definitely problematic and toxic. The people who engage in or support this practice don't believe in the First Amendment freedom of speech. You know how I know that's true? Because if they did, it wouldn't be an issue. So it could be suppressing the truth with different views or ideologies and uninformed, especially on social media. But what do we need to know? Canceling and cancel culture have to do with the removing of support for public figures in response to their objectionable behavior or opinions. This can include boycotting or refusal to promote any kind of work that they might be doing. What does canceling mean for today, though? Well, in the latest use of the word, you can cancel people, in particular celebrities, politicians, or anyone who takes up space in the public consciousness that a group of people don't agree with, mostly because of their political beliefs. Free speech goes way back in our American history. Here, listen to Witt.
Cancel culture is a cancer on society. There are ideas that don't make the mainstream because people are too worried about what other people are going to say about them when they say it. Unpopular ideas are the ideas that made the West. Think about the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers didn't care what other people were thinking about them. They knew that they had a greater purpose. And they started the greatest country in the history of the world, even though it was unpopular. Marxism, leftism, the postmodernism, these are the popular ideas now, and this is why they want to shame you for trying to get back to a more traditional America, the America that the founders built. So when people come at you and say you're a racist, or you're a domestic terrorist, or you're a threat to our democracy because you go to a school board meeting, or because you go to a local city council, or you're on social media fighting for the things that you believe in, don't be afraid when people say these things. Be bold, because it means that they have no other argument. They want to shut you down by scaring you and telling you that your unpopular opinions should be canceled. Don't let them. I'm Witt.
It is sometimes felt that cancel culture is when a person has opinions or proof that a section of the population doesn't agree with. whether it's truth or not. Cancel culture allows and applauds giving some of the power to lose their voice. To cancel someone, usually a celebrity or other well-known figure, much like Donald Trump, for example, means the person who's being canceled has been stopped from having a platform where he or she can speak freely. And whether it is true or not, it doesn't matter. It's still free speech. To stop giving support to that person, the act of canceling could entail boycotting an actor's movies, or no longer reading or promoting a writer's works, or just canceling their social media account. The reason for canceling can vary, but it usually is due to the person in question having expressed an objectionable opinion or having conducted themselves in a way that is unacceptable, so that continuing to patronize that person's work leaves a bitter taste in everybody's mouth. Some words are to invalidate, nullify, negate, override, overrule, redress, and it can last indefinitely on social media and by popular opinion of others. It's just not nice. It is a shutting down of a person's freedom of speech, which I talk a lot about because it's so important for me as a podcaster to have freedom of speech, so that I can do episodes like this on carm.org. That's CARM.org. The link will be in the show notes. It says here, the idea of canceling a person or product has been around for a long time. Both conservatives and non-conservatives have used it in a form of boycotting. But lately, social media has given rise to a kind of unaccountable mob rule that punishes the guilty for all sorts of moral violations that just aren't right. They all ridicule, threaten, and even try and get the offending party fired from their jobs. Canceling can occur for not being on the right side of such topics as, Black Lives Matter, a leftist anti-family pro-Marxism ideology, critical race theory, examining society as it relates to race, power, and the education of our youth, gender identity, a person's sense of his or her own gender regardless of biology, intersectionality, how discrimination and privilege manifests in a person's social framework, LGBTQ, an acronym symbolizing many sexual deviations, race and racism, discrimination or privilege based on a person's skin color. How about sexism? Discrimination of privilege based on a person's sexual orientation. Socialism, anyone? Increased governmental oversight with a decrease of personal freedom. Transsexuality, the surgical alteration to change a person's birth sex. And white privilege. The inherent privilege in society due to being white. All of these things are offensive to certain people and are subject to cancel culture. And what about canceling yourself? Well, no matter how strange or weird, we've seen those TikTok videos. You apologize for having a different point of view and are shameful for offending someone. Then you make a TikTok video so that everybody can see how sorry you really are. Self-effacing and apologetic. Maybe we've done this to some degree as well, but apologetic videos are not who we are, you and I. No, you and I are the people that are never apologetic for who we are, what we believe, and what we stand for. So no TikTok videos for us. And being afraid to speak your truth is going backward in history, and the true meaning of the First Amendment of freedom of speech is being violated. A new Cato National Survey finds that self-censorship is on the rise in the United States. Nearly 2/3, that's 62% of Americans say the political climate these days prevents them from saying things they believe because others might find them offensive. That's right. The share of Americans who self-censor has risen several points since 2017, when 58% of Americans agreed with this statement. Nearly a third, that's 32% of employed Americans say they personally are worried about missing out on career opportunities or losing their jobs if their political opinions become known. And that's such a bad thing. It's so terrible. What about the companies that practice cancel culture? Again, on calm.org. The liberal, self-righteous, online, brown shirt social police will take to Twitter, Facebook, chat forums, etc., goes on, to denounce and attack people who, for example, say anything bad about transgenderism, homosexuality, gender identity, LGBTQ, or have been deemed racist, or even support the wrong political candidate. As I said just a few seconds ago, there is no way anyone can ultimately justify any moral claim as being the right one, to which all people ought to submit. They don't have any universal basis of moral and ideological righteousness, so they invent their own and hold you guilty if you don't correspond to their ideology. And that's such a bad thing. From the BBC, we find this. It is cancel culture run amok. Conservatism, biblical-based morals, and non-political correctness attitudes are not welcome. Say goodbye to that. Please consider the following examples of condemnation. And this is quoted from the BBC. It will be in the show notes. How about the company Pepsi, criticized for controversial ads that appropriated global protest movements, including Black Lives Matter? Equinox, the gym club brand, faced a backlash after it emerged that its owner was holding a Trump fundraiser. How dare he? Starbucks was targeted for telling employees not to wear Black Lives Matter t-shirts and badges. Nike released a shoe with the original U.S. flag, but this flag had only 13 stars and comes from a time when slavery was legal. Uncle Ben's changed its name and branding after criticism over racial stereotyping. Examples of being canceled are countless. There are countless examples of people, products, and companies being canceled for not adhering to a politically correct position, for saying something that has been deemed inappropriate, or for an offense that has occurred decades ago and then is recently discovered. Who decides what is canceled and what stays in the public forum? There are so many people in the world that have social media and are out and about. It could be anybody that is canceling anybody else. It could be your friend. It could be your neighbor. It could be a person across the world. We know that the award-winning author of the Harry Potter series, J.K. Rowling, has been canceled for tweeting that she supported a researcher with a history of making transphobic comments and spreading harmful rhetoric about the T community in LGBTQ. The T stands for transgender. Don't tell anyone. The fast food chain Chick-fil-A, it was canceled by LGBTQ plus activists due to the company's support of anti-LGBTQ plus causes. Cancel culture can be disastrous, let's face it. It can ruin a person's life. It can curtail free speech, first of all, and free exercise of religion, something that we've always taken advantage of in the United States. It can hinder, restrict, and penalize people and companies and ruin people's lives. There's no doubt it's just not good. But why? Because the people who cancel others find someone or something guilty of violating their own ideology, dealing with, like I said, LGBTQ, socialism, marriage equality, abortion, and the list goes on and on. And of course, it has been shown that Christian values are not allowed. No, they're not. And the result is denial of free speech, denial of respect, denial of open dialogue, denial that they might be wrong about their different views, find people guilty of racism, intolerance, bigotry, and punish them, and doxing a person. Well, doxing a person is giving out an address or where a person lives or a phone number, exposing their private information online to harm them socially, financially, and sometimes even physically. These are all things that happen because of cancel culture and freedom of speech. I remember a time not that long ago where people were allowed freedom of speech. Do you remember that time? Where we're allowed to speak, write, protest, and have our own opinions. And although there may have been people that had different opinions, it was okay. That wasn't that long ago. The hatred of specific peoples and their reputation and financial status with whom they disagree is bigoted, intolerant, and oppressive, to say the very least. It restricts free speech and the free exercise of religion. We need to recognize that people have different ideas and that it's okay. It's okay to disagree. We must disagree with civility, not with violence, and not with the cancel culture practice. That's a good t-shirt. We must disagree with civility. On the Psychology Today website, I found this very interesting. Don't agree with certain people, find them offensive, don't like them, cancel them. Cancel culture is pervasive. Publicly canceling or calling out someone for words or actions that you find offensive, disagree with, or just plain don't like is everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It can be simple finger pointing or a coordinated demand for retribution for alleged transgressions, urging the audience to join in and add their voice to hasten the severe penalties of social ostracization. Cancel culture, preys on people's tendency to jump on the bandwagon and join in on activity because others are doing it. Not because of evidence, facts, or the truth, but because of others. Think about that. Participation is motivated as much as by fear of missing out, FOMO, or fear of being targeted for not supporting the cause, as by higher values. Kids are especially likely to join the crowd because the threat of social exclusion is no small one at that age. Social exclusion is experienced as real pain for anybody, and it takes a very strong sense of self to stand against a pack. It's rare enough in adults, but it's especially rare with children. It started as a means of social change, a way of speaking individual truths to positions of power. But where it was once focused on authority figures, public humiliation and shaming have become the go-to means of voicing disapproval, real or imaginary, against anyone. It's gone from social issues to personal ones, from celebrities and even comedians, such as Chris Rock.
What happens is everybody gets safe. And when everybody gets safe and nobody tries anything, things get boring. So I see a lot of unfunny comedians. I see unfunny TV shows. I see unfunny award shows. I see unfunny movies. Because everybody's scared to make a move.
We have a big problem if this is how we're teaching our kids to deal with problems and each other. Cancel culture has turned into bullying with a cooler name. It promotes ostracization over education, condemnation over compassion, and is deaf to redemption and change. It's a terrible thing all the way around. The most damaging aspects of the cancel culture are twofold. One, cancel culture is all or nothing. It gives no room for change or growth over time, accepting responsibility and learning. No opportunities for the prodigal son here. No way. And two, perhaps even more important than one, we are teaching kids that it's okay, cool, to attack those we disagree with, find annoying, or dislike. Under the banner of accountability, we are accepting public shaming and bullying as acceptable behavior for navigating power differentials with no attention to values or purpose. Listen to Tom MacDonald, who says it perfectly in his song, Cancelled, and then I'll come back and talk a little more about him.
I can't be canceled, there's no way that you can stop me. I'm fully independent, there's no label who can drop me. Y'all been starting rumors, let me help you with some. Yeah.
He's a racist, he's a sexist, he's in love with Donald Trump.
Y'all can't cancel me, my life is scandal free. There ain't no sponsors taking losses cause the brand is me. My hands are clean, my family and my fans agree. Y'all can't cancel me for facts because you're mad and weak.
Try as the establishment might and the big corporations might, Tom MacDonald, a white rapper, is on the being canceled list. Kind of. Maybe you've heard of Tom, and if you know why. If you don't, well, listen, because it's interesting. Listen to his 2-part videos, which I will include in the show notes, as he explains how he pretty much got screwed and was almost canceled. But in the meantime, let me explain that Tom MacDonald is a white rap musician, but he's so much more than that. He raps about topics that are triggering hot button issues and that are political in nature. He speaks his truth. He doesn't care what anyone thinks about his lyrics. He is a fully independent artist. No third-party video producers, no big record labels, no big distribution conglomerates. It is his very own homegrown marketing from some social media platforms and going live on Facebook stories and lengthy Q&As that make him who he is. So yeah, he really is fully independent. But recently, he was kind of canceled by the Billboard charts. Really, just kind of. Here, let me explain. He mentions several times that Billboard has been extremely good to him, even giving him a story about his collaborative new release, The Brave, with Adam Calhoun. But somehow, Billboard reported that they were not going to count his physical copies of his new CD, so therefore the number of sales that the data collection company gets won't in any way reflect how high the numbers of sales have been with his latest release, The Brave. Normally, data collection companies include streams, views, and downloads, and physical copies of music. Other artists can prove this by including vinyl and CD sales being counted. Mysterious, because they would not do that with Tom MacDonald.
I'll tell you a little story, and I'm going to tell you right now, it does not have a happy ending. And this story is called The Biggest Music Industry Screw Job Ever. Newsflash, there's a lot of independent artists who don't like me, but I hope you guys can see past the hate boner that you have for me and see how valuable this is and how important it is to independent artists everywhere. And you know what? It's not just independent artists, it's major label artists too. Look what Kanye West just did. Kanye just completely bailed on the music industry and released his new album on an MP3 player. What Kanye's just now doing with his album on his MP3 player is what I've been doing with physical CDs for 4 years. Completely cutting out the music industry, being a disruptor. Anyway, I just had to say that. I've been screw the industry before Kanye was. And we sold more physical copies of the Brave album than Kanye did of the STEM player, but whatever. Who's counting, right? I'll tell you exactly who's counting. Not the data collection company that reports the numbers to Billboard.
He certainly has a metaphoric target on his back with the words he raps about. Tom's words have certainly sent the music industry in a tailspin because he doesn't back down and he doesn't walk away without a fight. He will always find a way to fight for his freedom of speech and his freedom of not being canceled. He is a free spirit. And hey, one might say that 8 Billboard album #1 spots, well, not too shabby. Even without the physical copies being counted, he got #1 spots. And as he rightfully says, if we celebrate the crumbs, then it is crumbs we are given. We must move past being canceled because it only stops us from doing bigger and better things. But guess what? You will find it no surprise that what happened to Tom is nothing new, but only under a different terminology. That's right. It's true. People have been canceling others they disagree with forever. It just went under a different name. But let's look a little deeper, shall we? Could Tom MacDonald be falling prey to cancel culture because of his resistance to big corporations and their so-called rights to his profits? Yes. Could it be that he is being a capitalist and making money independently without corporations? Yes. Is he given a hard time for not taking a knee and bending to the will of the big music industries? Yes. This bullying doesn't work on the strong-willed that have a different opinion, and that is Tom MacDonald. And now, here is an audio clip from AJ Plus that is so interesting.
I'm told we're getting tremendous reaction to this. Has cancel culture gone too far?
Tonight, Cuomo is hitting back, denying the allegations and decrying what he calls cancel culture.
Some historians claim cancel culture is an evolved mechanism for keeping humans in check. That may be true, but the rise of social media has accelerated and weaponized it into an unforgiving cultural wrecking ball.
I will have the link in the show notes. You know, Joe Rogan, the well-known podcaster, has said cancel culture is toxic, and they, the opposition, try and take everything away from us, you, me, and everybody. Rogan says it's a toxic thing that they are doing, looking for people that are bad and looking for things that are wrong. It's very toxic, he says. A matter of fact, many news outlets have weighed in on cancel culture. The Hill publication says that cancel culture is free speech holding others accountable? Here's something from the Guardian publication. Is free speech under threat from cancel culture? How about the Washington Post, calling it the destructive impact of cancel culture in education? The Pew Research Center, writing Americans and Cancel Culture, where some see calls for accountability, others see censorship and punishment. Cancel culture is relying on feelings, not facts. Are we really unable to say anything anymore without having mobs descending upon us for having a difference of opinion? It sounds a bit ridiculous. This may be the equivalent to bullying many years ago, which many young people endured. This is prior to the interweb, and despite it. For an example, nowadays, it still exists, and we probably know individuals that have been canceled. Individuals lose careers, friends, social standing, and that's been true for a long time. For me, I was terribly bullied for most of my childhood. And yes, I was different. I looked different from other kids. I acted different. I lost friends for no reason or explanation. I lost many jobs regarding my opinions and beliefs. So yes, cancel culture hits us where we live, freezing bank accounts, losing business connections and positions only because the fear of what you're saying may just be true. The heavyweights holding down the featherweights, as I say, the establishment holding down the middle-class American. Well, let me tell you something. There is an old terminology that says it best. The bourgeoisie holding down the proletariats, or rather, the elites governing over the working class. The Justin Trudeaus of the world that make it hard to have freedom of speech and freedom to protest. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, who make it difficult to go about the world and the business of Californians by making impossible demands. This is what we call the bourgeoisie. It is the bourgeoisie that makes people uncomfortable and unable to do their jobs. It is big tech, big pharma that controls what happens to you. No matter how much they tell you they care, it's all about the money and power. And they will stop at nothing to cancel you, deciding what is right to say and what is not accepted. And the bourgeoisie is very powerful and unstoppable. And it is precisely why big decisions can be made, and once made, hard to change. And there's this as an example from an article about the characteristic of the proletariat. The least powerful social class of the traditional pyramid of the power structure to receive an economic compensation in exchange, a salary. It is also known as the working class. And in Wikipedia, it is said that the proletariat is the social class of wage earners, those members of a society whose only possession of significant economic value is their labor power. The substantial difference between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie is that the latter owns the means of production, while the former, that's us, that's the proletariats, sell their time and efforts in exchange for money. In other words, the bourgeoisie own everything, while the proletariat own nothing. And as the saying goes, you will own nothing and be happy, trampling over our constitutional freedoms to get to a bigger agenda, planned and paid for by those in extreme power. And why talk about these older words? These words that we don't use anymore, like bourgeoisie and proletariat. The bourgeoisie is the elitists, the bureaucrats, the uncanceled. They are the bullies in the system. Whatever the elites want to cancel, they will cancel. They have things that they can't tell you, but there's a higher agenda than any of us know. And they have their people working to help them do it. After all, the rich, big tech, and big corporations are the top of the political sphere, the big names on Wall Street and business, and even higher in education. And the proletariats are the rest of us, period. ! We work for the elites, the bourgeoisie class. We work for them to get rich, and they have power, and we gain barely anything. We are to be canceled. Anything that foils the end game, they will cancel. But why cancel? Well, the fear of losing power. Dissidents that have been canceled. The conservatives believe that cancel culture is an attack of traditional and long-standing traditions, and demonizing and ostracizing is the key component to that. But we all know that everybody deserves to have the freedom of speech, and with that freedom comes learning through debates and conversations from both sides of the aisle. Starting with Trump, big tech canceled him off of Twitter, something that has never been done before to a sitting president, blaming him for the January 6th event, and it was the only excuse they needed. How about Joe Rogan recently, the podcaster, having Dr. Malone on as a guest that tells the truth about the vaccine? Music artists threatening Spotify by taking their music off of the platform if Joe Rogan was allowed to still have his podcast on Spotify. And while we're talking about Spotify, how about PragerU not being able to advertise on Spotify because of their political views? A conservative website and app with free videos of politics and issues of the day. How about recently, Russell Brand? He's a podcaster, and he's reading from newspaper articles about things we all ought to question, having honest, open discussions and quotes from those newspapers. Dr. Robert Malone himself, inventor of the technology of the mRNA vaccine, for telling the truth. Dr. John Campbell, a vlogger on YouTube, fact-checked by the BBC and others. Dave Chappelle, speaking out against the oligarchs and big tech. Jordan B. Peterson, author and speaker, podcaster, said that if you have said anything reprehensible on public record, you will be slaughtered for it. All for speaking their mind and having their own opinion and their own freedom of speech. Adam Carolla, comedian and podcaster, has said this from a video produced for PragerU, that cancel culture and PC culture, that means politically correct culture, has hurt comedy. Anytime a comedian has to think, how is this going to sound? And who's going to hear this? Or how's this going to affect my career? You have affected a performance and you have governed a thought. It's stifling and it is going to hurt the product. If you think about comedy, traditionally, it has to be the freest expression of the individual. And they were just creative enough to speak. And we used to applaud that. And from the JSTOR website, I found an article entitled, Cancel Culture is Chaotic Good. Well, under the subheading, Is the Destructive Power of Cancel Culture Too Much? Well, this is what I found. Cancel culture becomes much easier through social media by using language as an effective weapon, a means of amplifying information of all kinds. And when you have masses of people not legally sanctioned to criticize social behaviors by using language as an effective weapon, a means of amplifying information of all kinds by pretty much anyone who wants to, it will never end well. Canceling someone in terms of public shaming or shunning or just being criticized is again nothing new, though it is arguably different in how quickly and severely it can be online. Whenever people have deviated from the norm, there have been public acts of shaming, from the scarlet letters or village stocks or Puritan life to the ritual public head shavings of thousands of French women who were suspected of fraternizing with German soldiers in World War II. And recently, the satirical website The Babylon Bee has been canceled, shamed, and displaced. The newest victim of the activist agenda by big tech. The Babylon Bee was recently banned from Twitter, citing a violation of their hateful conduct, and requires the tweet to be deleted before the account can be accessed again. And the Babylon Bee says, I can promise you that's not happening. Truth is not hate speech. If the cost of telling the truth is the loss of our Twitter account, then so be it. What was their Twitter crime that got canceled? It's a big one. Calling a transgender appointed Biden administrative official Man of the Year after a magazine publication made her or him Woman of the Year. And how about this from the Breitbart website? The article entitled China Cancels Keanu Reeves Over Tibet. The LA Times discovered that almost all movies featuring Keanu Reeves have quietly vanished from the Chinese streaming libraries. Most outside observers believe the obvious explanation for the banning of Reeves' movies is that he was a headline performer at the 35th annual Tibet House U.S. benefit concert on March 3rd. Reeves' contribution to the event was reading a poem co-written by Allen Ginsberg, who was a devoted participant in the Tibet House U.S. concert until his death in 1997. Tibet House U.S. was founded in 1987 by supporters of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. The China Communist government views Tibet House U.S., like most organizations associated with the Dalai Lama, as a separatist threat. But also, Reeves might have been singled out for cancellation because he has a large and devoted Chinese fan following. Pop songs that have been written about him and Chinese social media users frequently share clips and memes from Keanu Reeves movies that were never even released in China. And this article I found from The Blaze about Elon Musk asked Twitter users a serious question. He tweeted, "Free speech is essential to a functioning democracy. Do you believe Twitter rigorously adheres to this principle?" Out of the more than 1.8 million votes that have been cast so far, more than 70% of the responses have been no. Musk then followed up the post with a mysterious tweet declaring that the consequences of this poll will be important. Please vote carefully. And there is good news on that front. After Elon Musk tweeted out those questions, we found out the reason. From ABC News, Elon Musk is joining Twitter's board of directors a day after revealing that he'd become the social media platform's largest shareholder with a 9% stake. So that's great for all of us that have been canceled. And maybe we'll get our freedom of speech on Twitter back once again. Free speech. I love the First Amendment, and I have been duly forewarned of what life would be like if we didn't have the Constitution. Talking in a conversation setting is different. If you or I have opposing views, then the school boards, the teachers, and the decision makers, and social media, meaning the corporate elites or bourgeoisie, we will be canceled, and there will be some sort of repercussions on our daily lives. What is my call to action today? Well, my call to action is something that I've done, and I hope that you look into. Get off social media. That's something I've always said. Get off of YouTube by using Rumble. Get off of Facebook by using Getter. These are easy to find apps that you can download from the App Store. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode on cancel culture and free speech. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can go to truthdetectivepodcast.com to get to all my episodes and the links that I mentioned in this episode. And you can also follow Truth Detective. I'll see you next time. And maybe by then, I'll have my free speech reinstated on Twitter, courtesy of Elon Musk. Okay, bye-bye.